All right. Welcome back to the podcast. Today we have Rachelle. Thank you so much for coming on to talk to us all about slow living.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Before we begin, can you tell us one thing that you did today to take care of yourself or nourish yourself?
Oh, well, today I actually had a little bit of a sleep in. I let the kids go downstairs and sort their own breakfast out. So I had a bit of a headache. So I stayed in bed and yeah, it was nice. I don't normally do that. So it was a very good treat.
Oh, that's lovely. Can you tell us a bit about yourself and what it is that you do?
Yeah, so as you said, my name's Rachelle. I have two boys and they're aged 4 and 6, and I'm a slow living coach. My husband and I have had a trades based business for 10 years now. And yeah, so that's how I've kind of I guess, gotten to this point where I decided that I wanted to do something of my own that wasn't just all about tradesmen. So, yeah, I started my podcast. I've got a slow living podcast called How to Live Slow, and I'm a life coach. So I help really busy mums to slow down. It's really, yeah, I love it.
Very cool. It's so needed too. So, if
Yeah.
we start with the basics, what is slow living?
So, slow living is a philosophy, actually. It actually really stems from the slow food movement, which is a thing that was started in Italy around. Actually, a little background story. There was a McDonald's trying to open in Rome, near the Spanish Steps, I think it was, and the locals were like, "Sorry, no, that's just everything that McDonald's stands for goes against the food culture here in Italy." Um, and food isn't just about eating for convenience. It's really about really enjoying the food itself, the preparation of it, and also the relationships and the time spent together. So food is a big part of the culture, I guess, from that point of view. But it's slow living has kind of branched out from there to being a philosophy around just not hurrying through life and not just being busy for the sake of it, but taking the time to do things well. And now there are things like there's the slow parenting movement, slow travel, yeah, and slow can really apply slow business. It can really apply to anything. It's all just about really taking the time to do things at the right pace. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And I see
Yeah.
why it would expand into all areas because probably some people might start with, say, slow parenting, but then they realize that their business is going so busy and they're just overwhelmed in it
Yeah.
and they want to bring it into that part of their life too. And do you work with
Yeah.
people in all those respects or do you mainly work in one of them?
I mainly work with mums. Like, I love all aspects of slow living, but I mainly work with mums in the first 5 years, when they go through their matrescence period, which is that period where you're really changing. You were a woman, you have a baby, and that just often just pulls the rug out from underneath us, because we've got to go through this whole evolution and become a new person ourselves. And I think that the idea, and I particularly work with my mums who feel really overwhelmed by the idea of, air quotes, bouncing back, trying to get back to the same pace they were living at, trying to get back into the old body that they had, trying to get back to work. And almost there's a lot of pressure on mums to almost like forget that they even had a child, to get back and kind of take the kid along with their lives as it was before. And I really encourage my mums to, recognize that pattern and slow down and really take the time to build the relationship with their kids and to do the right things, the things that are right for them and their families, rather than trying to tick off boxes that society has outlined for us. Yeah, and I think that really gives you so much more fulfillment as a mother, rather than getting stuck into resentment and overwhelm and exhaustion. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like a much better path. I think back to when I had my first son, and I remember getting those messages from society and from friends saying, I'm so impressed that you just can do everything that you were doing before and you're living your life and you're just bringing your son with you. And they didn't see like the day to day at home where that was completely not true. But there was this, it was really reinforced. So I felt like there's this pressure to maintain that. And that was just exhausting. And yeah, just didn't work at all. And it just started to burn me out. So I think it's so important that you are doing that work with mothers at that time to help them to not go down that path. Do you work with
Yeah.
mothers like while they are pregnant as well, or more after?
It's more so after. I often, like, my mum's come to me and I talk about this thing called the friction point. And the friction point, and I particularly work with more so like the mums who choose or have, start again. So there's two kind of concepts that I have. One is called the flexible parent, which is where you find yourself, like, often in Australia, we have like a 12-month maternity leave, and everything goes along really nicely. And we fall into these patterns where mum does all the traditional mum jobs, dad goes off to work. And this is obviously just very generic. But then the friction point comes when the mum gets to the end of the 12 months of her maternity leave and is contemplating, well, how am I going to go back to work? Am I going to go back? Am I going to go back to work? How am I going to manage that? Should I go back to work full time? Will I go part time? And it's all kind of because we're in this mode of being the one to do all of the things from in the domestic sphere. And often we don't even realize that we should be having a conversation with our partner about, like, well, are we going to share the daycare pickups? Who's going to do what days? And we just take on the load of paying for the daycare, of booking it in, managing our schedules to suit so that we can almost, warrant it. And so many mums take on what I call a flexible parenting role, in that they're the ones who have a day off work when the kids are sick. Or they choose to not take a promotion, or they work part-time because it's better for the family, but not necessarily their option. And the friction point is when you realize that, and you're kind of at your relationship or your family dynamic becomes at the mercy of the cultural, like the patriarchal conditioning that we're in, where we don't really realize what's going on. And there might be friction within our relationships, for example, because we aren't consciously aware that what we need to be doing is asking for help and slowing down and communicating more effectively. So it comes out as martyr mothering, like we nag and we get frustrated and we feel taken advantage of. And it's not always necessarily our partner's fault. But yeah, so there's this friction point. It may be going back to work, or it may be wanting to do something more, start your own business or whatever it is. But they'll often, us as mums, we come to a point where we're ready to come out of that baby bubble. And that's where the friction point comes from. But now I've gone on such a tangent, I'm not even sure what the question was.
That's a time when moms often come to you when they reach that point.
Yeah.
Is that what? Yeah. And because I guess we don't seek out help until we really need it, right? Like, it'd be great if we could set up this type of coaching and mentoring ahead of time. But generally with your work, I'm guessing, and I know with mine, people come to me once, they're at that friction point or beyond it. They've been at that for a long, long time. Is that the case for you?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's that friction point. And often my mums come because they think that, what they need to do is slow down. And that is true. But actually, there's so much more. It's so much inner work as well. It's not just, it's not just a problem that they've got to solve on the surface of, okay, well, the problem is I'm too busy and I don't know how to slow down and I don't know how to rest. But there's reasons for that we're often not aware of. That's not, it's not just necessarily a you problem, it's a society problem. But which is really cool. So that's when my mums usually come to me, like, help me slow down.
Yeah. And I think we often do think it is something internal in us that's wrong or that we have to navigate. But when we dive into it, it really is often those systemic societal problems that we are experiencing and having issues with. But you have to gain that awareness first, don't you? And then you're able to navigate it. So what are some of those societal reasons that come up? Like, is it that busyness? I know for myself and a lot of the clients I work with, their self-worth is so derived by being productive and being busy, and we're being reinforced to be that way from a young age, right? For achieving and doing and doing and doing rather than being and being intentional and being slow. So what are some of the societal reasons? Is that a big one for you, or are there other ones?
Yeah, I mean, the productivity culture or hustle culture of, you know, doing it till you're proud or whatever. But also, I mean, that all kind of stems from capitalism and how your value comes from the dollars that you earn. And we're taught that basically from the moment we start school. School is kind of like training us to be good workers under capitalism. But our cultural conditioning as well, we're under patriarchal capitalism as well, which also teaches women that they're not as, not as equal as men, and that also our worth comes from how we care. Sorry.
That's okay.
I'm silent then. Our worth comes from how we care for others. But so there's this friction between, like, a successful woman is able to do it all and have it all, but a good mother is at complete odds with that. So we've got these dual kind of conflicting identities that we've got there as well. So that productivity culture of like doing, and kind of ticking off those social, all of that, those like, get a job, buy a car, buy a house, go on holidays, get a promotion, have 2 kids, all of those things, all of that, that's kind of like all those pressures to do that keeps us busy. And that's where it all kind of comes from. Often it's not necessary. And the whole philosophy of slow living is to stop and pause and reflect and understand, what are our actual values? What do we actually want from our lives? Because often it's very different from what we think it is, based on our cultural conditioning. So we're often heading towards goals that we think are important. And because we're so busy, we haven't had the time to reflect. So we might get to a point, in our mid-30s or something, where we've done all the things and we're still not feeling fulfilled, because they're not actually the things we actually wanted. So, I think that's, again, there's so much to it, isn't there? Like, yeah.
Yeah. And I think getting that awareness of what those societal influences are and how we do live in a patriarchal capitalist society is so important. And then, like you say, getting clear on what we want, and how it can be really hard to get to that point when you are mid-30s and you realize, shoot, I've been doing all these things thinking that's how I'm going to get fulfillment. And then realizing, well, you're not, you feel a bit empty with that, or you feel dissatisfied. So it can be, there's a bit of grieving that can go on there, can't there be?
Yeah, exactly. And again, that grief keeps us busy because we're not very good at feeling sad feelings. We just push. And, there can often be another reason why we can get really busy is due to like childhood experiences that were a bit negative, or that we want to run from, or like we might be trying to prove ourselves, or, finally get to a point where we feel safe and like we've achieved something, or we've reached kind of some level of acceptability where our value has finally been achieved. So that keeps us busy as well. But yeah.
And do you think by working with women and them realizing that they don't necessarily value the things that our society does, do they gain a lot of empowerment in that by recognizing that and going after what they want? Or what happens for them in that journey?
Yeah, it's such a lot of undoing, because so often, you can become aware of the fact that you've been influenced by the culture, and that you want to slow down. But I mean, think of any time when you've said to yourself, okay, I'm just going to have a day off and rest. I'm just going to sit on the couch and read my book or whatever. And you just get so much guilt from doing that. So it's not really a one and done thing. It's an ongoing process of consistently asking yourself, is this what I want? How can I find time to rest? How can I let myself off the hook of this guilt for resting? And so I think there is a lot of empowerment, but it can be quite confronting, actually, because, slow living on the surface of it just looks like doing less or having boundaries, saying no to things, but actually there's so many ways that you fall back into old habits, because even when we try to go on a budget, and we try to or maybe maybe we realize that we're actually not into consumerism. So we think we might but it's so easy to go, okay, I'm not going to be into consumerism, I'm going to shop secondhand. Next thing you know, you're always at the secondhand shops, and it, like, but you're still spending money. Like, so it's just, just totally slowly undoing all of that. Yeah, but I think once you get to a point where, it's really just about sovereignty, isn't it? Personal sovereignty of, so of course it's going to be filled with empowerment. It's going to be filled with just the satisfaction of knowing that you're living your life according to what's important to you, even although it looks or feels very different, or, and there's a lot of safety that you have to get to be able to make decisions that go against what might be culturally acceptable, or, acceptable from your family's point of view as well, or your friends as well. So you have to be quite brave.
Yeah. And I imagine that takes time to make those shifts. And it's like peeling an onion. You might get somewhere, and you, like you say, with the secondhand shopping, but then what's the next step after that, and reducing that consumerism into your life. But I love that it comes to that being like a sovereign being. I think that's such an incredible place to get to and work towards. And that's a journey, but along that journey, you learn so much about yourself, and you do gain strength in yourself, don't you?
Yeah, that's right. And, then you can start to communicate with your loved ones in more effective, direct ways as well. It doesn't feel like a confrontation every time you stand up for your needs, which is another part of patriarchy as well. That we're not supposed to have needs, and speaking up for them, or looking after our needs as women is somehow taken away from others.
Yeah, that's a really big one that women have to shift. And I think initially we can be aggressive with that, with getting our needs met, because we're not used to just asserting ourselves clearly. So it can kind of swing from being really meek or being aggressive. And it takes time to find that middle ground where you just feel solid in yourself and you can just be clear on what you need.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's talk about slow living in terms of parenting. Like, how does slow living impact on our children, and how can parents start taking steps towards having a slower life in a doable way? Because in our society, with our friends, with our family, we are going down one path, and it can be so hard to do something different. So how do we, as parents, start taking steps towards that? And how is that helpful for our kids?
Yeah, so I mean, slow living is so, to me, I can't say it's the best way, because obviously everybody's got to do their life the way that suits them. But for me, it's a really great way to raise your children, particularly in those early years, because, well, I've got a friend, Jojo, who runs a business called Slow Postpartum. So she's a postpartum doula, and she really advocates for those first, particularly like that fourth trimester, when you've got up to 3 months old, really letting yourself be taken care of, and to just focus on connecting with your baby and healing from the pregnancy and the birth. And that to me is going to set, like, I see that setting you up for a really, the whole purpose of, like, why would we have kids if we didn't want to have relationships with them? And those early years, like taking the time to really be with them as much as possible, and to, maybe you've got kids who don't sleep through the night, or they don't eat, or, they've got other things and you need to rest and recover. Like, that takes its toll. Postnatal depletion, as you know, is a really big thing. And trying to get back to rushing through life, and getting things, ticking off all the boxes, it just takes its toll on the family. And it benefits our kids, because our kids, like, a lot of child development kind of, specialists say that kids need to know how to be bored so that they can be creative. They need a lot of time outdoors and to play. And I know for my kids, we don't really necessarily put them into too many extracurricular activities, which I know, families, parents particularly, feel really pressured to put their kids into all sorts of activities right from an early age. And that's great. Like, I think, like, a baby music class, I think I did with my oldest son. And that was actually more for me, for the social side of it, for me to see other adults adults rather than my son so much. But like things like when my older son started prep, and all of his friends were starting soccer and doing swimming and doing all of these things, and I just couldn't see how my son could cope with that. Like 5 days a week of school, it's so tiring. And to then have to rush off on the sixth morning, Saturday mornings, to go off and do soccer and, stay doing training after school and trying to fit all of those things. Like it's just too much rushing around and not enough free time. As they get older, obviously that comes into play so much more, and you want them to be active. But if you're providing, and if you're living a slower life, it's not just about doing nothing. It's actually providing them that space and time to play and to go outside. And that's really, it's just so beneficial to our kids. Yeah. And to us.
Yeah, for sure. And do you feel a pressure, or do the mothers that you work with feel a pressure to stay in that busy culture with parenting, with getting your kids to go to all sorts of extracurriculars? Or
yeah.
I
mean, I even struggle with that. Like my son is 7 now, and he's in year 1, and again, he's not in. We didn't sign him up for soccer. We said we'll do that next year, and he's starting to notice now, like all my friends are at soccer and I'm not. And I feel really like, have I let him, should I have put him into gymnastics? Should I put him in, should I be out there doing this and that with him? Like maybe he's being left behind. But do you know what? When we go and play on the weekends, we just go out and play soccer with friends in the neighborhood or whatever. And he's playing it at the same level. And he's the one hoping and asking us, I want to join up for soccer next year. I want to do cricket. I want to do this. I want to do that. And I think that is the difference. So I have to remind myself, like I have to remind myself as well, like, it's okay. They're not missing out. It looks like they're missing out, but they're not actually missing out. There's lots of other benefits. Like it, I think there's so much pressure for that. And, it takes a lot of courage to not push them into all of these activities, but the payoffs are, it comes around full circle when the payoffs are that they're asking you to do activities rather than, come on, we've got to get ready for this or we've got to get ready for that, which I know is a big problem for a lot of parents. Like, they don't even want to go.
Yeah, exactly. And I imagine getting really clear on what your values are and how you want your family life to be makes it a lot easier as well to make those decisions, to hold off on putting them in a million different activities and waiting to that point where they're asking.
Yeah, exactly. And that's another thing. Like often we're not really even sure what our priorities are as a family because we kind of just go along. We don't really take the time to talk about that stuff, set family goals or to get input from the kids and that sort of thing as well, like what's actually important.
And what about screens? How do they come into this? Because sometimes when kids are at home, there's a tendency for them to be on screens. So there's an argument that I've heard from parents where they put them in lots of things to keep them busy and to keep them physical and their mind stimulated. And so they're not just at home watching TV or playing on a tablet.
Yeah, I know it's a really tricky one. And I actually, in the past, I've probably been quite judgy about screens and quite strict about screens, but I've realized, what, we actually don't need to put that much pressure on ourselves to worry so much about it. And there's lots of research to say that screens aren't a great idea for particularly younger kids. But if, I think this is an opportunity for us to, model healthy behaviors. I know that my kids want screens more when I'm really distracted on my own phone, and I might be like, no, you can't have your iPad, but I'm sitting there scrolling on my phone, so it's kind of like, it's all about modeling healthy behaviors. So, I mean, again, it's another thing where this is an opportunity for us to communicate as a family by saying, all right, well, what can we come up with? And getting your actual collaboration with your children around what they think is an appropriate amount of screens and setting the rules or the boundaries together. And, I know my preference is for my kids to not be on screens in the mornings. So I have to kind of be okay with, well, then I have to let them have it a little bit of an afternoon sometimes or things like that. I mean, my preference would be for them to not be on screens at all, but this is the reality when, as long as you're providing opportunities for them to, and that's, again, it's on us as parents to kind of provide those opportunities for them to kind of get outdoors, and be engaged in that as well, to enjoy being outdoors ourselves, or to play with them. Like if we're giving them screens so that we get a break, then there's also another, something to look at there as well.
Yeah.
So it's all just information, I think, how things go. Yeah.
And that modeling part is so important, isn't it? Looking at what we're doing, why we're doing what we're doing, and what we're modeling to them, I think is such a good place for us to start. Because, we can't expect our kids to do things that we're not willing to do. Go outside, but we're never out there. Get off your screen, but we're always on ours.
Yeah, exactly.
So you talk about balance, like not being a thing. And I love that, because I just think balance is not really possible. We're always juggling things, and sometimes we're going to drop some balls, right? We can't prioritize everything always. And it's a really unattainable expectation that we put on ourselves, especially mothers. There's always talk about balance in motherhood. So if balance isn't achievable, or I would even argue like not even desirable, what's the alternative? And how can we focus on moving towards that alternative instead of the balance?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I love the analogy. We always talk about juggling our balls, and the balls being all of the competing priorities we have in our life. And they say, like, if you were to get sick or if something were to happen, which balls are made of glass and you can't drop them? And those are your priorities. And so when the others fall away, you know that those are the things that you can spend less time on. And I like that analogy, but I also would say that is still being reactive. That's still being external to, having your values external to you. It's still letting other people decide what's important for you to focus on. So instead of focusing or thinking about it from a balance point of view of, it's always, you can kind of have, balance in a sense, but you've got to bring it back into yourself. So you've got to, I prefer to think about it as being focused or understanding your values. So slow living is all about knowing what your values are and what is your priority in this season of your life based on your values. So the analogy that I prefer to use is to think about yourself as being like an umbrella. So instead of juggling all the balls, which are all the things that everybody says should be important or that feel important, to sort of think of yourself as being, opening an umbrella, and, that umbrella is all of the priorities, are all the raindrops, everything from external is like landing on your umbrella, but you've got your umbrella up and that's protecting you because you've got strong boundaries. You know what your values are, you know what's important to you, and you've got those things under the umbrella with you, and you're protecting them from everything external to that. So I like that analogy. It's a little bit more like I'm the one in control. I'm not at the mercy of what other people say should be important to me. And I think that if you think of it from that point of view, but really it's more about knowing what your priorities are and being okay with upsetting or disappointing other people because you're holding on to those values or those things that are important. Just having those firm boundaries and understanding yourself, and knowing that when you're saying yes to something that's not an important thing, you're saying no to things that are. Yeah. And I think that gives you something better than trying to find balance. And understanding your own capacity as well and your own energy flows, because, we're not mobile phones. We can't plug ourselves in and get 100% charge every single day. We're women with hormonal fluctuations, and our energy and our ability to cope and manage with things changes on a day-to-day basis, as I'm sure you're aware. But so also allowing that, not putting the pressure on yourself. Like one of the things that I love to say is, when you're doing like your weekly planning for your week or whatever it is, schedule yourself to 70% or less, because at least you'll probably hit the mark a bit more, rather than trying to squeeze 120% in to 100% of a day. Like it's just, yeah.
Yeah,
And that
that's a
can
good
feel really
shift.
uncomfortable. Yeah.
Yeah, because we're not used to doing that, are we? We're used to just doing more, more, more rather than being
Yeah,
okay with doing less.
exactly. Yeah. I remember my coach, Joe Bendel, said to me years ago, if you aim for 5 average days in your work week, for example, and you hit it, you're going to get more done than overscheduling yourself to the point that you can't take action on anything and you get nothing done because you're so overwhelmed and spinning your wheels. So it's so true. And like aim for average doesn't sound like very motivational advice, but it totally works.
Yeah, it is. It's a mindset shift, but it's actually a really useful one, isn't it?
Yeah.
So how do we start giving ourselves permission to live our lives on our own terms? Like, is it that we are so connected to our values and our priorities and that makes us feel solid in us? Or is there more that we can do? Because I know as women, that can be really hard. It's that self-awareness is so important. But then how do we start living that way and create those boundaries?
Well, I think of it as, yeah, an ongoing kind of cycle. Like you said, it's like peeling an onion, or you might, it's this, the cycles of life. Like we're kind of, we're part of nature. We have seasons and cycles just like nature does. So if you think about it from that point of view, I kind of have this like system that I talk about in my program, The Slow Life. And I guess not a system, it's like a cycle. And the first step is to do less. So and then you move on to needing less, and then you live, you be more present, and then you live more aligned. So they mirror the seasons of nature. So the doing less phase is kind of like winter. So we take some time to rest and reflect and to try to scale back small things, to do less and to have more boundaries, and to just try it with a few things, like be okay with like maybe taking one extracurricular activity out, maybe changing a few of the ways that you set up your rules around like how you say yes. So maybe instead of automatic, like you can't go from always saying yes to everything even when you don't want to, and having no boundaries, to instantly being like, no, I've got boundaries. It doesn't really work. But you might change the rule to being like, I don't say yes straight away. So my automatic response is, can I get back to you? I need to see if I can. And then when you do that, then you can move on to what I call spring, which is the needing less, which is more minimalism. And so you can look at, okay, well, how can I reduce the things in my life, the clutter that's overwhelming me, or the mental load and things like that. The mental load is often mother's biggest, thing that we manage. So how do we reduce the mental load? Again, that's another, thing. And then you move on to being more present. So you've kind of created more space in your life in small ways. Then you can be more present, with your life, and learn to feel more safe in the present moment, because often we're so used to rushing towards the next thing that being in the now and playing with our kids, or doing all of that, like, can feel really confronting and kind of almost uncomfortable to do that. So we be present with, okay, well, what's uncomfortable? And then you move on to kind of autumn, which is living more aligned, which is where we look at, okay, well, now I've done all this work, what's not working and what do I want more? And then you start again and you go, okay, well, I need to make these changes. So then you rest and reflect and you go along and you slowly like peel the layers down. And I think that makes it so much more manageable and so much more self-supportive than just going, I have to make all these changes and I'm going to slow right down and I've got such a big task in doing that. Yeah, because so much of our go on, sorry.
Well, you don't want that overwhelm, do you? To be like you're trying to create a slow, intentional way of living. That overwhelm is just counterproductive.
Yeah, that's right. And on the surface, slow living looks like just doing less and, lighting a candle and having a bubble bath when you're stressed. But when you get started on it, you find that it's actually a real unwiring of a lot of our learned patterns of behavior. And that's really uncomfortable and really can be confronting. So that's not to dissuade anyone from giving it a go, because on the other side of all that discomfort is the life that you actually truly are here to live. And understanding what that is and giving yourself permission to have that life and to become that version of you really is where the magic lies, in that fulfillment, that internal fulfillment. So you don't have to be suffering from FOMO. And I think people think FOMO is such a bad thing, but it's just information. It's just, you know, when you're feeling FOMO, it's just saying, well, hang on, there's something in your life that you want that you're not chasing. Yeah. So yeah, when you can live a FOMO free life, I think you know that you've really, like, you're starting to live towards what you really want.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love how you're seeing the FOMO as something like that is information. Like, let's get curious about that, not just find
Yeah.
it irritating or go towards that thing, but ask why? Why am I feeling that? And that model that
Yeah.
you have, that cycle, and how people go through it over and over again, I think that's how a journey is, right? You don't go through something really quickly once, you keep cycling through it like the seasons. I think that's such a beautiful path that you take people on in your program and in your sessions. I think that's super useful. And it seems really exciting to be shedding what beliefs we have and the ways that we live our lives to create space for what we want as we go
Yeah.
forward. And that is, you're right, that's where the fulfillment is, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And, you know, a lot of us, I think it's Brooke McAlary in her book, Slow, like she has the Slow Your Home podcast. And she says in the start of her book that she wrote a eulogy. And I thought that was really powerful, just reflecting on what you want people to say about you at your funeral, you know, because there's, like, you know, everybody's, you know, I'm sure you've seen that thing about, you know, the regrets of the dying, and like how, you know, no one ever wished they worked harder, or no one ever wished they scrolled social media more, or whatever it is. Yeah, but what do you want to be remembered for? And then work towards living to that, because then you know that you're living towards what, you know, isn't actually important to you.
Yeah, I think it's a really, really good, really powerful exercise to do. So,
Yeah.
in terms of in your life, if you look to your future, what shifts do you want to make in terms of slow living? Like, what are some big and little shifts that you're currently working towards on your journey?
Oh, that's such a great question. I am currently trying to figure out if I would like to homeschool or not, actually. And it's so complex. There's so many decisions, because I don't mind the school the school that we're at is really beautiful, but it's 5 days a week. And it really, like, it's been a big adjustment for us as a family, having school in our lives now, because it means that, you know, we've got to go on holidays at the times everyone else is on holidays, where that wasn't what we used to do. And I would love to go traveling long term one day. So yeah, that's a whole thing. And I feel like, you know, slow living and homeschooling might go together really well, because then we could, you know, manage our own, you know, we're not beholden to school hours. But that's a very big one, though. That's a big decision. And yeah, I'm currently trying to slow down more around taking the time to prepare more from scratch meals rather than convenience food all the time, and getting the kids to, you know, I think over Easter we definitely got big sweet tooths. So, and yeah, I think I've relied a lot on, you know, not prepackaged meals or anything, but, you know, not from scratch. And I really do love and enjoy cooking. So yeah, a little bit more home cooked, which is good for the environment as well.
Yeah, those are really incredible things to be like working towards. So I'm excited to hear what you end up deciding with the homeschooling question, because I
Thanks.
think that's one that so many parents are asking right now, because they do want more
Yeah.
flexibility. And we're getting so much more flexibility in our workplaces, but school hasn't really shifted in that way. It's still the 5 days, the set hours. And even with the pandemic, there's been a lot of shifts. A lot of people have been going down the homeschooling or unschooling route. So yeah,
Yeah,
I'm excited
definitely.
to hear what happens, what you end up deciding.
Thank you. I'm hoping that we can take a longer trip at some point later in the year, and that might be our testing ground to see if it would work for us. But yeah, you're right, because school starts at 9 o'clock. Like my sons love to get up and do things early on. Like that's when their brains are on, sort of like at 6 o'clock in the morning. So by 9 o'clock, it's kind of our midday, like we're early birds. And so, yeah, I think the learning hours required, it's just, I'm not sure that it's always, going to be good for every child.
Yeah.
Mm.
So if each one of us could do one little thing today to move us closer to a slower, more intentional life, what would you suggest we do?
I would suggest that, and this is a funny one, but I would suggest that you actually schedule in time for things that I call white space activities. So it's all the things that we do that we just, like they just happen, like it might be putting a load of washing on, hanging the washing out, changing the toilet roll on the toilet, helping the kids put their shoes on, making lunches. It kind of all just gets all bundled in to the white space, but we don't really have a lot of white space in our lives. So and again, this helps you to schedule yourself to 70% because you've got that, you realize that actually that stuff all takes time and it all adds up, and it is a drain on your mental capacity. So that's one that I'm really playing with a lot lately, is to remember all of those things that you have to do as a mum, particularly, that don't get the airtime, or they're not necessarily always valued, but need to be done. And I think sometimes that the other thing to do is brain dump. When you're struggling with the mental load, write it all down. And sometimes you can go, it's on the paper, now I can cross it off. And that's quite satisfying. And like, even if it's not important, it's out of your head metaphorically and physically. Yeah.
Yeah, those are really good ones for the mental load. Do you have any other suggestions for the mental load? Because that is something that, yeah, so many mothers nowadays are struggling with. Like you say, it's one of the biggest issues because it's just so much, and it's not
Yeah.
always that concrete. Like it is changing the toilet paper roll and remembering an appointment in 3 months' time, and on and on and on.
Yeah. I mean, the mental load is a huge one, and there's so much to it. But yeah, I think the one that really works, at the starting point for me with the mental load is that brain dumping and making a plan. Like we actually, on a Sunday night, randomly, this is another long story, but on a Sunday night, I sit down and I firm up any appointments that I need to firm up, or I reschedule any that don't feel right. That if if I didn't realize that my period is due, for example, and I know that on a particular day I'm probably going to have a premenstrual headache, I'll reschedule an appointment, that sort of stuff. But I also then go away and I brain dump everything that I need to know or remember or think about. And I go away and I talk with my husband about what has he got on that I need to know about. And I let him know the things I need to know about as well. Like he needs to know about that I've got on, so that we can support each other and work our schedules in a little bit towards each other. And then that sort of helps him as well, because, that helps me because I can then take the time to say, can you help me with this? Or can you help me with that? Or I'll think that, something's important and we chat about it. And he's like, we don't actually have to do that, or something like that. So we work together to sort of, I know a lot of people think that they need to figure out a way to share the mental load and get their partner to help more. And that is true. But I think that you can get beyond that by kind of thinking of it as something that, like nagging can come into it as well, kind of. So like opening up the active lines of communication and, just saying, this is what we've got on as a family, and who's going to help with what. Yeah, so I
Yeah, I
don't know
think
if that's it. Yeah,
yeah, it's more
it's
collaborative, and
complex.
yeah, it is. And it's really complex, and it's not easy it's not a one and done thing to just lower your
Yeah,
mental load. But I love how you're making it more collaborative, and the wording you're using there with your husband. It's as a family, it's not, I have this. Can you help me with all these things? It's that we as a family have these things on. And yes, I have these things and he has these things, but it is more collaborative and collective. And I think that does
Yeah.
bring more responsibility from both sides.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. And I mean, from the male female perspective, I think men like to help us solve our problems. So why not benefit from that by presenting our mental load as a problem that they can help us with rather than saying, you're not doing enough, or you're not helping me, or why haven't you done this, or why haven't you done that? That's not good for your relationship. But as again, when you're really busy, when you're feeling stressed and resentful, it's really hard to approach it from that point of view. And that's why slowing down, yeah, can help with all of that, because you've got the time it takes to nourish those relationships, which is valuable.
Yeah, definitely. Well, you've totally sold me on this slow living. It's something that I'm dabbling in and working towards, but I'm a lot not as far on the journey as you are, but it's a journey I'm working towards. So
Good.
tell us a little bit about your program. Like you walked us through those 4 stages or seasons in your program. How can people find out about this? How long does it go for?
Yeah, so it's in fluctuation at the moment, but the slow life is being kind of retired. That was where I made that one a long time ago. It's self-paced at the moment. You can actually get it. It was about $4.90. I've got it down to $97 at the moment. And it's just a self-paced thing that takes you through those 4 phases. But I am loving the seasonal approach now. So I'm going to be running it more live in each kind of season. So we'll go, and what I found was that those 4 seasons in one kind of 4-week block was just way too much, which is kind of against the philosophy. So I'm breaking each one down and kind of going through it per, physical season. So in winter, this coming winter, and I'm changing the name. It's going to be called Strong Mothers. And it's a process going from martyr to matriarch for busy modern mums. So it's that, that going from the external forces to being more internal fulfilled. So Strong Mothers, it's we're going to be talking about those initial steps of like how to do less and how to have boundaries and know what your priorities are and things like that. That's going to be in winter. So I haven't set the price yet, but yeah, you can find it all on my website.
We'll add links in the show notes. It sounds incredible. And I love that you're bringing not only like the seasons to it, but you're working people through it with the seasons and slowing down. Because I think, a lot of the time we feel pressured to create or engage in courses that are short and get through everything, but that's often unrealistic. So just focusing on one part of it in that season, and then the next one is, I think, a really doable way to do it.
Yeah, thank you. It's a bit of an experiment, but because one-on-one is where I'm at the moment, like those, one-on-one clients, but because it's what I can manage at the time as well. I'm sure everyone understands, like, when you've got little ones at home, it's not always easy to even engage in a course, let alone run a course. But I love it. I just love helping my mums. It's really great.
Yeah, it sounds incredible. So anything that you wanted to mention here that I didn't ask you, or any final words of wisdom that you'd like to share with us?
I would say that, understanding your own value as inherent from, separate to the things that you achieve on any given day or the amount of money that you can earn. Like, you're a valuable person. And I think knowing that benefits you and your kids, obviously I'm talking from mums, from the perspective of women who are mothers, but it goes without saying, like, everybody is valuable. And I think when we know that we're valuable regardless of what we get done on a day, that can really change things. And the way that we can show up in our relationships and be there for our kids is evident as well when we're taken care of. When we understand our value, we can take care of ourselves, and by default that makes us able to communicate and have deeper relationships. So it's important work.
It's really, really important work. Yes. So thank you so much for coming on here and talking about slow living and all the ways that we can start working towards this. And why it is so important. And I'm sure you've convinced a lot of listeners, if they're not already on the slow living bandwagon, that it's necessary. I would even go as far as to say that we do implement some of this stuff or all of it. But where can we find you? Where are you on social media, your website? And this course, it's on your website, you said? Or
Yeah,
the one
it's
you're
on my
working
website.
on?
Yeah, yeah. So my website is howtoliveslow.com, and you can find me on Instagram at that name as well. And my podcast is How to Live Slow. So it's very easy for everybody because the spelling of my name is not straightforward. So How to Live Slow, you'll find me. Yeah, and I'd love to connect. If you've got any questions or anything, please do reach out.
Great. Well, thank you so much for coming on here.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.